Welcome to the Healing My Parts podcast, a podcast dedicated to educating and raising awareness about dissociative identity disorder, also known as DID. We are your hosts, the system behind Healing My Parts, which also includes parts that function as a therapist and leader in a mental health niche space. We'll be sharing tips and tools that have helped us and many others, while also sharing insights from our own journey of living with the condition. We'll also be hosting guests for conversations to help educate, dispel myths, and most especially help those living with dissociative identities and professionals who treat the condition. Thank you so much for tuning in. And now, let's get healing. Welcome to episode 8 of Healing My Parts podcast. We are super excited for today's guests. We've been following them on Instagram for a while now, just absolutely loving their content. And we were recently blown away by their presentation at the Healing Together conference, where they tackled topics about being a DID system in a relationship and so many relevant, important pieces of information that you literally can't find anywhere else. So we are thrilled to welcome the Gianu System and their hubs, the SplenDID Supporter, to our podcast today. Welcome, and thank you for coming on the show.
Thank you so much. I'm very excited to be here.
Same here.
Before we just kind of dive into topics or questions, is there anything that you would like the listeners to know about you, people who may not know you? What should people know about you folks?
So for those who haven't been following, I am Gianu System on social media, Instagram, TikTok, YouTube. I think it was 2018 that I started therapy, and a year later that I found out that I was a system, and we didn't know things got better. Like, there just wasn't a lot of information. And so we began putting our journey online when we realized how far we had come, thinking that this could be something helpful for other people. So that's my my little spiel / side hustle. By day, I'm an author. So if anybody is interested, you can go to JE Craft Books. That's with a K, KRAFT.com. And I have a really cute middle grade chapter book about a rescue cat whose family gets a puppy and the cat's not okay. And then I have an urban fantasy vampire thriller for those who like darker tastes.
With a sequel on the way.
Yes. Sequel almost out.
Gosh, that's amazing. We will definitely put the link in the show notes too, so that people can scroll down and click.
Thank you.
And Jonathan, who are you by day?
Yeah, by day, I'm a real estate agent. That's what I do. And by also day and then night as well, I am a supporter of my wife and with her mental health journey.
Which is so awesome. I'm super excited to have both of you here. So we were all actually at the Healing Together conference together, and what you both were willing to share, able to share, and how well you were able to get across pain points that people who are systems deal with, as well as supporters deal with, and delving into topics that, frankly, I don't think you can find anywhere else, but I think is really important for people who are dealing with dissociative identities and their supporters to know. I wonder, though, for folks that are listening now who didn't get to come to the conference and maybe hear you, do you feel comfortable sharing a little bit about kind of how you found out that you were plural from both of your perspectives?
Absolutely. So when we got together, Jonathan knew very early on. I said, you can't yell at me. I'll fracture, I'll crumble. He came from a family of yellers. So this was just how they communicated, like Howard and his mom on Big Bang Theory, give me some butter. Okay. just their dynamic. And I was like, you can't communicate with me that way. And he said, okay. And really meant it. I was so impressed that from that upbringing, he was able to be like, if that's what you need, okay, I can work with that. So going in, he knew I had childhood trauma. I knew I had childhood trauma, but I read self-help books, I did stuff here and there. And because I was functional, I figured I was fine until I wasn't functional.
Turns out she was just really great at avoiding triggers.
Yes, I'm bananas at avoiding triggers. So rather than me being like, "Oh, I'm healed," no, no, I'm just so good at avoiding triggers. And then it was I think the winter of 2017. I woke up one morning and I couldn't remember the past several days. I was very numb, very robotic, and it just like happened in an instant. And I was as concerned as you can be without having an emotional response. Like I was intellectually like, "Oh, this is bad," but I had no emotion to go by at all.
She was totally different. Like it was just like, as you can see, I mean, she's just very bubbly and like expressive, and for her to just be like really just emotionless was I told her, I was like, are you ever gonna get better? Like, are you ever gonna get back to the way you were? And she was like, I don't know.
And that was the point where I was like, I think I should see a therapist. And so after the Christmas season was over, I looked into what was available in town. And the first session I went to, I was trying to explain why I was there. And I didn't know any of the jargon. So I didn't know that I got like sucked into an emotional flashback and was very triggered. All I knew was I just was crying through the entire thing and could hardly get a word out. And the therapist was like, "Do you think maybe next time your husband would be comfortable joining you?" And I was like, "I'll ask." Uh, so it was fantastic though, because what we found was that Jonathan helped me stay grounded and in my window of tolerance. It was very effective for me to actually be able to begin therapy at all.
Before we knew about grounding.
Yeah. In the meantime, everything that I was learning, he was also learning. So it was really helpful for both of us. He was learning what to do when I got triggered and activated, and I was learning how to actually feel feelings and communicate those, which was very difficult. Yeah. And it was about a year from the first trigger. So it was in the winter of 2018. I called him at work, which normally I would just hide when I was not doing well. I'd mask, cry when he was gone, you know. But I called him at work and I was like, "Hey, just so you know, I'm having one of those moments where I can't stop crying. I don't know any reason. I just can't stop." And so he left work and just came and we put into practice the things we'd been learning in therapy. It was like 2 hours of staying with this crushing grief, and at the end of it, I had my first memories come back. And I guess I expected repressed memories to be like all scary and sad, but these were memories from just me as a little girl. But I had no compass for who I was as a little girl. Like I'd see pictures of myself and know that was me, but I didn't know who she was. And all of a sudden there were these memories of me little doing things, and it was remarkable. And that was the beginning of the barriers coming down enough for me to learn about my system. It wouldn't be for another month or two until I met E, but that was the start of it.
Such a remarkable
Mm.
journey. I'm just thinking about, I have so many more questions for you about a couple of the things that you said, but I'm curious, Jonathan, from your perspective, what did it feel like when, all of a sudden this person that you love and you still love, obviously, your lives kind of radically changed there for a bit, right? Like the way that you were relating to each other changed, even what you would expect in terms of emotional reactions seems different. And now wait, I've got to learn a guidebook on how to be helpful and how to respond. And what was that like for you?
Yeah, I mean, it was kind of scary because here's this person that, I mean, at this point, we've been married for 15 years. And so you think you kind of know somebody, and then they're completely different. And so, it was like, my instinct, I guess as a guy is like, we got to make it better. Like, how do we make it better? And so when she said, I think I need to go to therapy, I was like, yes. therapy, let's do it. And so, after the first time, like she said, and her therapist said can you bring your husband in? That was the best thing that ever happened for us. Because if I remained on the outside while she was going through all this, our story would be very different. And I'm very fortunate that it happened the way it did, because I know that most supporters don't get the opportunity to learn these things along with their spouse or with their significant other. Like at the beginning for the first year, she was going 3 days a week. And so I would go with her 3 days a week. And we learned things together and we talked through things together, and we were on this journey together. So as she was learning things about herself, I was learning those things too. And as she was learning grounding techniques and how to, like, internal family systems and how to talk to little you, like if you could talk to your 6-year-old self and say something to her while all this was going around, what would you say? And those are all things that I was exposed to at the same time that she was. And I get the question a lot about how did you react the way that you reacted? And 100% it was because of that. If I would have been doing my thing and she was doing her thing, I don't even know whether we'd still be together, honestly.
Mm-hmm. That makes a lot of sense, because I know that was definitely a question that we had, right? Is how did you go all in? Because you went all in, and it's evident for people who start to follow you or see some of your interactions together that you really committed to this whole process. You're committed to the Gianu system. You're committed to your relationship. You're committed to weathering all of the storms. And it's a big dance. And it seems like you both dance really well together.
We do.
We do.
For you, Jonathan, was there a moment where you said to yourself, "Yeah, I am all in. I'm committed to this." Like, was that a conscious decision, or is it just sort of organically who you are?
I don't know. I don't know that it was necessarily a conscious decision. I think it was just, I knew who she was and I knew that she was not herself. And I was committed to doing anything that I could do on my end to get her back to herself. And so from that first counseling session where Jenna just started telling the therapist her story and everything, I was like, this is it. Like, we're going to keep doing this, because I knew, I didn't know whether it was going to solve it, but I knew it was at least going to help in some way. I just knew that was what we should be doing.
I was thinking while you were talking about, sort of getting her back to who she was, that made me think about what a surprise for both of you that that person had so many multi layers and depths and beauty, so much larger and bigger than what you probably ever imagined.
Oh yeah. And the thing is, and I think that this part is probably in part due to my personality, because I'm just kind of I don't know, I deal with people all the time. So
He's very social.
anytime I can learn about somebody new, like
Mhm.
I'm all in. Like I want to know everything about everybody. And so when E first came out, and well, she wasn't out yet. Like she was like talking to
And I
Jenna.
wasn't okay with this. I was terrified. I was like, there's an angry teenage girl yelling at me in my head, and I don't know what to do about it.
And we had been through therapy together, so she's talking about that, and to me, like, it doesn't even, like, because we've been through all this therapy together, like I was like, oh, that's not weird. It was like, I was going back to internal family systems type stuff, and I was like, where you talk to your
Mhm.
your younger self. And so I was like, well, have you asked her why she's mad? And she said, I don't want to encourage her.
Yeah, I'm not trying to talk more to the voice in my head. Like,
Right. But I was like, well, she's yelling at you. You might as well ask her why
Mhm.
she's mad. And that started he being very willing to tell her
She
why she was
was.
mad. And so, like, it became a thing of where Jenna was kind of the middleman, and E was talking, well, tell Jonathan I said this, and I would say, well, tell E I said this. And finally Jenna was like, you know what, if you want to talk to him yourself. And that's
Mhm.
when she came out the first time.
That had to be an amazing moment for both of you,
It
really.
was
It was,
wild. Just
she was scared, I was excited.
I can envision both perspectives actually pretty well. I'm going to sort of pause for a second to backtrack because I know for sure that we'll end up getting messages with questions about this if I don't ask it, which is for you, the Gianu system, when you first started becoming aware of the
Mhm.
others, what was that experience like in the first person? In other words, people will always ask, did you hear something? Does it sound different? Did you see something? Did you feel something? Usually trying to figure out for themselves, like I'm having an experience myself. Let me see if yours is anything like mine as I try to figure myself out. So it's always helpful sometimes to just get different experiences because we're all different,
Yes.
right?
So for for me, it started with this buildup of emotion, which they had been teaching in therapy, exile nothing, like accept the emotion. And it was really, really intense. And I recognized it as like I felt this before when I was 12. Like, so I recognized the feeling and it got like just stronger and stronger until finally I could hear E yelling at me, like, which I imagine she had been trying to get through to me the whole time I'd been feeling this build. But she was locked away at 12. We had finally gotten out of the traumatic situation, but at that point, like, what we had been through was overwhelming our ability to survive it. And so Jen, who became the host, is the only one of us that I know of that can, like, we call it the big red button, where she just shuts it down. And she shut it down, shut E down, locked her away because we couldn't navigate safely the things that needed to be processed to survive. But we had just been a year in therapy gaining these skills. And so E was the first up and she was mad. She was mad at being locked away. She was mad at how we'd lived our lives, the way we interacted with friends and family. She had an opinion about everything down to the clothes I was wearing. Yeah,
That's where we
that's where her
bond.
and Jonathan bonded. Yes. She has excellent fashion sense. And Jonathan was like, you gotta help me out here. But like it was very much like an intrusive voice saying things in my head. Like it wasn't audible, but it was saying things that I had never even thought of, like ever. So it was very alien to my thought processes. And when I would respond, she would respond back. So it was a back and forth conversation with this teenage female angry voice. And it was really disconcerting. I thought, oh, this, I guess, is it. I've lost my mind officially. But Jonathan was like, oh, ask her why she's mad. And then I tell my therapist, and my therapist was like, I think this might be a breakthrough, which was also a really good response because I'm terrified. So my partner is like, why don't you like it's safe to interact. My therapist is like, oh, this is a positive thing. And so it helped me to be able to like unclench enough to be able to interact, to be more curious than afraid. It was a snowball from there.
It's such an interesting parallel process in some ways because I'm thinking about Jonathan, your natural curiosity about this. Who are you? Tell me more about you. I
Mhm.
want to get to know all of the parts. And there's that I totally identify with the fear. Like I have lost my ever-loving mind, and if anybody else finds out, I'm going to lose everything that I
Yes.
hold dear. So nobody can find out about this.
Yes.
And I don't want to know. And if all those voices could just shut up, please, that'd be great. And of course they don't. It just seems like they get louder. But the key was when you said, when I became curious, it's almost like that's an invitation,
Hmm.
right, to different parts to begin to let you know who they are.
Definitely.
I wonder for both of you, were there particular tools that were helpful as you were learning more about your system? Because it's pretty neat that you got to learn about it together.
It was very much helpful. I know a lot of supporters disbelieve their partner when they tell them, like, don't know how to react or how to interact when they're triggered. But because Jonathan had the same foundational tools that I did, like when more traumatized parts came out, he was already respectful, already understanding that like their traumatic reactions were not like an offense to him, like that this isn't, they don't like him because of who he is. It's like, oh well, they have, they're trauma informed in their reaction here. That was incredibly helpful. What else? You got anything in particular?
I mean, the grounding was incredibly helpful.
I still do that.
The internal family systems thing was helpful. Just in terms of like, it was a very easy, uh, I guess, jump from that to dealing with DID, because it was already in terms of like saying, well, there's different parts of you, and everybody has different parts of themselves, and so like it was like, it, I don't know, it just kind of, for me, it made it an easy jump to say, okay, now these parts are just talking and they have their own opinions. And so it wasn't as far as I think it would have been if I was just like, what do you mean there are other parts? And like, didn't have any background knowledge about it at all.
Yeah, that I think is really disorienting for people who don't have that background knowledge. And when you classified it as, what do you mean? That's perfect response for so many people.
Yeah.
In a relationship, I feel like this is the stuff that people sometimes look for, both supporters and people living with dissociative identities, right? Is when you're living as a collective that sometimes functions as a system and sometimes does whatever the heck it wants, because that just happens,
Yes.
right? There's a reality. I don't know if this is true for you or not, but in many systems, right, there are parts that don't like the spouse or have a different sexual identity or have a different gender. And navigating that is not necessarily that intuitive.
Correct.
And I wonder, I mean, it can be challenging just as one of the people or a host of a system realizing like you do have parts of you that are the different genders and have different sexual preferences than you do. And that's a whole thing in and of itself. Never mind navigating that in the context of your marriage at the same time. And I wonder if you would both have the bandwidth to talk a little bit about that, how you navigated it, what you found that was helpful during the bumpy parts.
Yeah. The first male alter that I encountered, I cried because Anthony was male, gay, very comfortable in the body, very comfortable showing off the body. In my opinion, coming from a very conservative religious background, I was shocked and like I everything came high up on the neck and like low down on the knee, and like I never showed skin. And so I was so just uncomfortable with the whole idea. And it was really Jonathan's acceptance. Oh, I like Anthony. I think he's amazing. That helped me once again to go, oh, I mean, and then Jonathan would give specifics. He does this, he's that. And okay, so maybe then he's not threatening, and maybe I can look at him in another light. It was harder, I know, on Jonathan, especially when JA emerged, who identified as lesbian and held a lot of sexual trauma. And so when Jonathan would walk in the room, the body would just start to shake if she was in the front, because instantly in fight or flight. And so it was months of just getting used to his presence and being very antagonistic toward him, because all her experiences with men told her that like this is a bad idea. She was actually very angry that we were married and married to a man. She was like, this is a horrible idea. This is incredibly unsafe. So she's going around the system telling everybody else not to trust Jonathan, then telling Jonathan to his face that she didn't trust him and that he needed to get out of the room.
So Caleb,
So like I know that was challenging.
yeah, she told Caleb, she was like, you can't trust him. And Caleb was like, I think he's nice. And
Yes.
she's like, that's just a facade. Like, you just wait. He's gonna show you his true colors.
Just wait. That was her thing. You just wait.
Yep. You just wait. You give it time. But yeah, that was tough. Because it's hard not to take it personally. Mentally, you have the knowledge that like, don't take it personally. This is just because of what she went through. But emotionally, like, you got somebody who doesn't want to be around you. Like for the first, I would say 4 to 6 months, she didn't want to be in the same
Mhm.
room as me. If I was going to pass through a room to get to another room, like if I was going through the living room and into the kitchen and I was going to have to go by her, I would have to announce that, hey, just so you know, I'm going to walk by you, but I'm going to stay on the far end of the room so you don't have to worry about, and just having to do that, with somebody that you've been with for a while, like it's, it's difficult, but I was determined to
Mhm.
win her over. There's not too many people in this world that I don't get along with that don't like me, or at least like, they're like, he's not my cup of tea, but he's a decent guy. So it's like, it was my mission to win her over and to, get to a level where we were at least friends. So it took a while. After about 4 to 6 months, we were going on a date, and JA comes out, and we are going to be driving to this concert. We had never been, we've never sat that close. And so I'm like, are you going to be okay to go? And she's like, yeah, well, I mean, we've already told everybody we're going. And so we were sitting, and she was like leaning against the door in the car, like trying to keep as much distance as possible. It didn't sit with me
No.
during the concert. We had a row of friends. She was on one side of the row, I was on the other. And I think she found it to not be the worst thing. And so from there, we were able to sit, like we had two couches in the living room. She would sit on one couch, I would sit on the other, things like that, where we got a little bit closer proximity. And then from there, it just kind of grew. But about a year and a half in, yeah, it took that long. But about a year and a half in, we were in Destin, Florida, and Jenna convinced me to go
Parasailing. Mhm.
parasailing. I'm just terrified of heights. And so she convinced me to go parasailing. So I'm like, I'll do it for you. And so I go up, and I'm up in the air with her, and she's like, oh, I think everybody should experience this. So like she starts calling back to people.
By this time, we had learned some voluntary switching skills. So anyone who wanted, I'm trying to pull
Yep.
them forward because this is an experience.
So JA is scared of heights, and I forget who it was. I think it might have been Caleb who said, oh my gosh, JA would hate this. Well, just saying that pulled JA forward. And so she's like, ah, and me and her were sitting up there, and she's like, what are you doing up here? And I was like, well, she said she wanted to go hang glide or a parasailing. So I was like, I told her I'd go with her. And she's like, you actually did this for her? And she's like, I wouldn't do it for her.
Hmm. This is crazy.
So there we were together, both scared out of our minds, up in this, parasailing harness. And that's when we became friends.
Hmm. It was
That is the
the
best story.
so they finally bonded over
Yep.
terror of heights.
It was literally what I was just thinking. So a year and a half in, as you had this like increasing almost like exposure to each other, getting a
Yes.
like inching closer, and then all of a sudden you're stuck in terror on a parasail.
Yes. And it was a year and a half of consistency. And I tell supporters that a lot. They're like, my partner's alters don't trust me. Well, they have very good reason not to trust you. And if you want to change their mind, saying, oh, I'm different, isn't going to do anything against the experiences that they've had that are informing them otherwise. You need to be consistently who you say you are. And that over time, will give them a new frame of reference.
And that makes so much sense. And at the same time, I just am so impressed with your ability to do that, because knowing how well you touched on it, right? Like cognitively, I know this isn't about me, but it's really hard to take certain things, to not take certain things personally because it's painful. Somebody that you love, another part of that person is saying something that hurts, hard to not have feelings about that. And being able to stay steady and whether those feelings, keep the cognitions in your head so you keep reminding yourself, right? And there's somebody that does love me though,
Mhm.
and I am going to win this person over. Like your tenacity, your perseverance, so much about how you navigated this is so incredibly impressive. And I think for people listening, really inspirational. So if there are partners that are struggling, right, in those moments of basically, oh shit, I just met a part that absolutely hates me.
Mhm.
And we're living in the same house. And I think I might be sleeping on the couch tonight or whatever it
Yeah.
is, or in the basement as that may be. There is hope that this actually does change and it can get better.
Yeah. The first progress that was made with JA was she was like, well, you're not the worst. So no, I like you, no, nothing. Just the admission, well, you're not the
In other
worst.
words,
Like, I suppose if we had to be married to a man at all, like, well, okay, well, this'll do.
You just got to take the compliments as they come, right?
Yes.
yes, yes, that's a win.
Yeah. She when she first emerged, like, so once again, coming from a religious background, my language was squeaky clean. JA had no such qualms and would absolutely let him know what she thought of him and all the colorful verbiage. And once they became friends though, like she still loved the colorful words, and so it became a term of endearment to cuss at him. That was like their thing afterwards.
Yeah, her pet name for me was I don't know, cuss or whatever. So just effer.
Yes.
You know, that was her her word for me. And so like I would call just to say hi to Jenna during the day or whatever, and Jay would be out and she'd pick up the phone and, hey effer.
Mhm.
And
Oh gosh.
so it was just, or I'd come home and I'd say, hey, how was your day today? And she'd just flick me off,
Yes.
and be like, oh, hey, how you doing?
I love hearing about how your relationship blossomed over time, as it was
Mhm.
becoming just more clear about all the layers that are there and all of the different insiders that are coming forward. It's really a beautiful story. And I
Thank you.
wonder, I know it's difficult when you're the person going through it.
Mhm.
I wonder if you could also share a little bit about how you balanced it all, right? Because just for people who don't have dissociative identities, healing from trauma feels like a full-time job and is
Yes.
exceptionally challenging. And it's exceptionally challenging for their significant other as well.
Yes.
Never mind when you are living as part of a collective system and you're trying to navigate all of these different relationships and healing trauma. And if I remember correctly, the two of you have children
Hmm. Yes.
and jobs
Hmm.
because it is nice to have a home
Right. And
and food,
food.
food is
Yeah,
good,
the little
place
things.
to sleep.
Yeah.
How did you manage all of that?
It was definitely difficult. And at some points more than others. I think that being committed to each other and to each other's highest good was really important. There was a time when it was when JA was emerging and I was becoming aware of some of the memories that she held. And my concern was that if we start doing like trauma work on these memories, if these memories start seeping over to me, like, am I going to be able to interact with men at all in a romantic way after this? And neither of us knew the answer to that, but we both were committed to healing and whatever healing looked like. And it was so terrifying. But one of the things that I realized was that because of trauma, I had abandoned myself along the way. And I couldn't do that anymore. So like I couldn't leave JA to deal with it alone, no matter what the consequences of it were, looking at what she was dealing with, no matter what that meant for my life. So Jonathan and I would have talks about it. Like, I don't know I don't know what this will look like. We really encourage people, like, at this point in the game, we both had our own therapists. We were going separately. We really encourage partners of multiples to have their own therapists, because you're going to need to work out some stuff. Like, things are going to come up that you can't navigate easily by yourself. But we had really frank talks about it. And at one point, Jonathan was like, look, if we're just best friends living together, if that's what it's going to be like, that's okay. So it took a high level of commitment to each other and a high level of commitment to the healing process. Um, Still, when we're doing trauma processing, Jonathan will call me post therapy. There's been a couple times he's had to come and pick me up because we got into the weeds in therapy and I couldn't drive home, and then I couldn't function the rest of the day. So whatever he had going on, he now also has taking care of the kids and food and stuff, because I got, like, I'm too shaken to really function. And it doesn't stay that intense, and it's not always that intense, but there are times, and it takes a lot.
I think it's so important for people to know that, because there's this desire that we'll just dip our toe in,
Mm-hmm.
we'll take a peek, and then somehow we're all better, right? We don't
Mm-hmm.
talk enough about it can get really ugly, it can get really scary, and it can get really sad. Grief can be overwhelming, but it doesn't mean you're going to be swallowed in it forever. And it doesn't mean that you don't heal. So I love the
Exactly.
fact that you said it doesn't stay that way.
Mm-hmm.
And it's one of those things, like I think of the meme where you got the person in the mine with the pickaxe, and they stop right before there's gold on the other side, but they
Mhm.
can't see that.
Yep.
But it's on the main, and it's like, yes, it's hard. Yes, it's a lot of work. Yes, it feels like, things are always going to be chaotic, and sometimes they still are, but it doesn't stay in that same level of chaos, and you get to the other side. And I'm sure the length of time that it takes is drastically different for each person, depending on what they went through and who they have helping them.
Mm-hmm.
But but just stick it out, just hang in there, and it's going to be a new normal. It's not going to go back to the way it was, um, but it's going to be good. Like,
Mm-hmm.
it's going to be something that you can settle into again, where it's not like this unknown all the time, but like I don't know, you just kind of settle into a new rhythm.
Yeah.
It's funny because the parts of our system that function as a therapist are kind of throwing up all of these things that clients will say, right? Like the people who will say like, but I don't want to feel any of that stuff. And the people who will say, but I like it how it is. Like, do we have to mess this up? I just want it to stay the same. And when you think about it, even if this were not an issue, life really never stays the same, right? Like we just don't have as much control as we wish we did, whether that's health issues or people
Mm-hmm.
that we love, or just the fact that going through the lifespan, our bodies change, right? We do not look like how we looked when we were born. None of us are 8 pounds anymore.
Yeah.
We, once you're beyond 17, you're not supposed to look 17 anymore. There's so many things that just change beyond our control. And what I love about what you are not just saying, but kind of what you're exemplifying is the necessity for flexibility throughout life, right? Can we be malleable as our situation changes? And when we allow ourselves to do that, the new norm can be really even much more beautiful than the old norm was.
Yeah. Our
Yes.
relationship is so much stronger, so much more secure than it's ever been because of that. Systems oftentimes discount that they can have healthy relationships at all. Like, I've heard so many systems say, "Who would want to be in a relationship with me?" But the truth is, everybody in their life is always growing and always changing. And either you grow and change with them, or you don't,
Or you grow
or you
apart.
grow apart. So, Jonathan as I underwent this huge change in my life, grew with me. And having DID does not exclude anybody from having healthy relationships. It doesn't exclude anybody from being a worthy partner or someone who can have a lifelong romance. It just takes somebody who is willing to grow and change with them.
Absolutely. And it can be, it can look different since you just mentioned the relationship and growing. One of the things that is a little different, right, for systems is something that I was so impressed that you both were willing to talk about at the Healing Together conference, because gosh knows I have not seen it written about or spoken about anywhere. And that is the issue of consent in couples around intimacy, because it can be different when you're a system. And I wonder if you wouldn't mind talking a little bit about that now so that people who are listening can share it with their significant others, or if there's a friend out there who has another friend who is a system in a relationship or is getting into a relationship. So they might share it, because I think it is really different.
Yeah.
And it's so important for everybody's safety and well-being and health.
I would start by saying that first, the decision on how you're going to engage sexually is between the system itself. So this is something a system has to decide, like what they're comfortable with, and how they do that's going to vary from system to system. We have a good degree of communication, and so we kind of do like a majority rules thing. We talk about it and let people throw what they think in. But so first it has to be between the system themselves, and then it's between the system and their partner. And it's excellent to have input by a therapist. So if the system's like, I think this is how it should work, to talk to the therapist, this is what we're thinking about. But if the system is okay with something and then the partner isn't, then that's one thing. And it goes both ways. So first you have to decide. I know some systems are like, well, only this person is in a relationship with that person. And that's the only, like, nobody else is allowed in a relationship with that person. For us, we considered the body to be married, is how we thought about it. So like JA, not at all interested in Jonathan romantically, but she didn't feel comfortable pursuing her other romantic, like any other romantic interest, because the body is married. I will say that Jonathan, for his part, like let her know that whatever she needed for healing, which I thought was amazing. So that's before you even start getting, is deciding what you're comfortable with. But then when it comes to consent, it's something that there's the phrase enthusiastic continual consent. For systems, that counts even more. So first you have to be paying attention, because the alter who enters the engagement could end up switching out. If littles become aware, like they can't consent. Like if they can't consent, they can't engage. And I know for some systems, like I said, that's between them and their therapist, where their alters are emotionally. For us, like there was the awareness of, okay, I'm consenting now, but at any point in this engagement, that consent could be revoked. Someone could be brought near the front who is not at all interested. A trigger could be brought up. It takes a high degree of flexibility and a partner who is willing to accept that sometimes things get interrupted and they don't get picked back up. Is there anything you want to add, Jonathan? I like took off with that one.
No, I liked everything you said. I mean, in my mind, and really, so this is what taught me what consent should look like, honestly. But in my mind, learning all the things that I've learned, this is really what consent should be for everybody, regardless of what kind of relationship they're in. So it's not really, it's more like learning a skill that everybody should know, rather than something you just have to do because you have a partner as DID. All consent can be revoked at any time, no matter what relationship you're in. Um, you know, all consent has to be enthusiastic and not coerced or whatever, so it's, and I learned that through this. Like I learned that through this process of doing this. But after I did, I was like, this is really what everybody deserves, you know. And so that's the thing of sometimes I would become aware of things before Jenna would even be aware. So like I would see glimpses of somebody else who didn't really need to be there. It was at times frustrating, if I'm going to be honest.
Yeah.
Like times it was frustrating, and disappointing. But, it just, oh well, you get disappointed sometimes.
Yeah.
That's life. You deal with it. I'm a grown man. I can deal with it. I can figure out how to deal with my own emotions and feelings. And that's not Jenna's responsibility to deal with those for me. So
Sometimes with a system, because trauma can be stored wordlessly, alters can have trouble voicing objections. Jonathan became very good at watching for, like he said, signals that someone might be around that might not necessarily be able to voice objection. And I so appreciated the, like you said, the enthusiastic consent, watching for enthusiastic consent and watching for if we would freeze. Because that's our usual fight, flight. Nope, we're all about the freeze. And so if he would see us like kind of still a little bit, are you okay? Do we need to stop? And that's so very important. It's a high degree of sensitivity that takes place for multiples. And when we were trauma processing certain memories, like sometimes things were just off the table for a while because we were too raw. And like he said, like I'm a grown man, I can take care of myself. And that's what it looks like sometimes.
I love how the two of you are committed to each other and the best interest and well-being of each other, which is so important in any relationship.
Mm-hmm.
It's always interesting to me when problems or potential problems arise in a relationship and the primary issue is a mental health issue versus a physical health issue. Because
Mm.
I feel like there are physical health issues that get in the way of sexual intimacy in a relationship or in a committed relationship or any relationship, right?
Mm-hmm.
And when it's the physical issue that gets in the way, it almost seems like people just kind of accept that so much easier versus when there's a mental health issue that might be getting in the way. There are people who can accept it and do very well, like the two of you. And there are other people that really struggle and get angry about it. And the person who's holding the mental health issue is almost placed in a position of being blamed,
Mm-hmm.
right? When they're just doing their best. And the stigma associated with any mental health issue, and especially dissociative identities, is so enormous that it clouds people from really thinking through the reality of the situation, right? Like, how would I feel if my partner was dealing with a physical issue that got in the way of what I want to be doing right now?
Yeah. With physical issues versus mental issues, there's definitely more compassion on the physical, but I can 100% guarantee you that had Jonathan not been respectful of our mental issues, JA would have never trusted him. Like she was watching,
Yeah.
she was all the time in the background. Like, I know he's a man, therefore, this is the area where he's going to hurt us. Like, and so she was specifically waiting for him to hurt us in that area. And so really his ability to have integrity, to understand consent, to understand how to do this dance in a way that is like healthy for both of us was so healing. I really don't think JA would ever have come around otherwise.
well, and that actually is what I was going to say.
Mm-hmm.
We talked about it getting better, but it doesn't get better if
Mm-hmm.
if the person is being re-traumatized and re-injured by someone new. Like, Now I'm the one who's causing injury, and I'm the one who's um, causing this issue rather than it being this other person back whenever. And so yes, it gets better, but if you're like, well, why not? Why can't we? What, like I don't know, you're putting this pressure, like, what if they say, oh, okay, fine. Now everything that you do from that point forward is re-injuring something that was already broken to begin with. And so you've just set back
Yeah.
healing for who knows how long. And have I done things unintentionally, not talking about necessarily this, but like in all dealings with Jenna and with the DID and everything, like have I ever done things that set her back? Yeah. I mean, you're going to make mistakes. You're going to do
Yes.
things. We were learning, we're learning together. And so it's just going to happen. But how you respond to that, do you learn from it, or do you keep doing the same things over and over again? Really will determine the speed of healing and the trajectory of where everything is going.
I love that. It makes so much sense. And I think it clarifies things for so many people when they stop to really think about it, right? Like, can we be accountable? Because as human beings, there's no way that we can go through life without inadvertently negatively impacting each other at some point or multiple points. So when that happens, can we be accountable for it? And like you said, learn from it and do better or do differently. Maybe it's not better, maybe it's just different.
Yeah.
But that's commitment and
Sure.
growth, right? To each other. That's what makes a relationship so strong, or one thing that makes a relationship so strong.
Well, and just learning that we could have those conversations was a huge point of healing. Um, because to even voice this hurt was not something that we could do for at least the first decade of our marriage. So to voice, hey, this hurt, and then to have him respond appropriately with, oh, I'm sorry, I didn't know that hurt. Like, how can I do different? Was just that in itself was huge. Yeah.
We had to process the first 10 years of our marriage, and we had to process those things that I
I couldn't
did
voice
that I
it.
didn't even know because she didn't tell me. And so
Mhm.
like, I couldn't correct it. I didn't even know it was wrong. And so like it took,
Mhm.
like, we're 15 to 20 years into a marriage, and you hear that something you did in year two caused injury, it's like, your first thought is like, wait a minute, we're going back to talk about
Mhm.
something that happened 18 years ago. Yeah, we are. And all I could do is just say, I wish I would
Mhm.
have known. I'm just sorry. I'm so sorry.
Yeah.
Um, you know, but then you move on.
It's that wonderful moment where therapist parts get to underscore the importance of clear communication, but also, right, like being able to point out that for very good reasons, there are partners who can't communicate.
Mhm.
And a lot of that, right, is rooted in history. And sometimes it's rooted in things that people don't even understand. So if there are people that are listening who are supporters, it can be a good opportunity to just check in with your partner, right, from time to time to just ask, is there anything going on? It's perfectly okay to tell me, because I also know that there are folks that maybe do have the language, they choose not to use it and think that the partner should know.
Mm.
Nobody can see me using the air quotes that I'm
Right.
using with you guys, but right, like you should know air quotes. And yet like none of us are mind readers. Sadly,
Mhm.
we can get really good at learning about each other and probably being better at predicting, but there really isn't anything like clear, direct communication. And as relationships get closer together and stronger and communication is more direct, compassionate, and just clear, everything goes better.
It really, really does. Jonathan has, as a partner, been really good at intuiting um, our emotional state, which was helpful because once again, uh, we couldn't voice any kind of objections for at least the first decade of our marriage, just because of trauma. Um, but when we learned those skills, and it was in that first year of therapy that we learned how to voice anger, like, and we had to do it in session because it was so terrifying to us. But it was just so amazing to see how much easier it was when we could clearly state something. Uh, like, as terrifying as it was, like, yeah, in the moment there was no going back.
The
Once
moment.
we learned, we were like, okay, that what it didn't, he didn't leave, he didn't hurt us, he didn't yell. Like, that was amazing. Scary but amazing. Let's do it again.
And it's the doing it again, right? Like over time, it gets a little easier.
It definitely does.
I feel like there's nothing quite as terrifying as the first time,
Uh-huh.
right?
Yes.
But that's where the rubber meets the road.
Mm.
That's where the partner's response will make or break whether it happens again. And, whether they're open with you again. And so once again, it's you have the ability to propel things forward or to have a setback. And sometimes you'll get it wrong,
Yeah.
and you just
Yeah.
try better the next time.
There's like almost this formula of compassion, curiosity, tenacity.
Yes.
Yeah.
Hmm.
Yeah. For all parties,
And
right?
compassion for
Yes.
yourself.
And those
Yeah.
things together, I mean, this sort of the sky's the limit when you put those things together, whether it's curiosity about particular parts, aspects of the relationship, each other. Gosh, I'm sitting here thinking, I wish there were more places where this stuff gets talked about because it's so helpful for people trying to navigate what's a uncharted territory. And there's no guidebook.
There's not, like, no one tells you, like, when you find out that you're multiple, they go, no one sits you down and says, okay, so now you're gonna have to decide, like, do you each part, do they want to pursue their own relationships? Does everyone want to try and agree on a single person? Like, there's no at all. There's no landmark going, this is the way for you, and this is not the way for you. It's feeling your way forward.
What worked for us may not work for somebody else. And so that's why things like this are
Hmm.
important, because as we tell our stories and other people tell their stories, I feel like people that are going through this can say, well, I relate to this little piece and I relate to that little piece of this other story, and slowly begin to put the puzzle together to where they can come
Yeah.
up with something that works for them and their relationship.
It's so true because you're right. Everybody is different, whether that's the healing process, relationships, and it is so helpful to hear other people's experiences. I mean, if we think about just sore topic, right? And I won't belabor it, but we just think about how DID is portrayed in the media. None of us are
Hmm.
supposed to be able to function, apparently.
Or have a healthy relationship. There's definitely none of those.
Right.
Oh, yes. No, that's absolutely true. Like, no
Hmm.
healthy relationships, certainly no careers.
Hmm.
Yeah. I guess sort of like nothing except in popular media, there's a serial killer somewhere. Like, it's just so
Right.
bizarre. And I think that creates an environment that when people start to
But
suspect that this might be what's going on for them, they don't dare to say anything or they will like over.
yeah, no, it's
Mm.
people were not meant to go through life by themselves. You hear the research where they're like a child, an infant that is given food and given, the things that are necessary for life, but are never held and are never, touched or anything like that, will still die. And so, like, we need each other. We can't do it by ourselves because it just doesn't work. It's never going to bring anything positive in our life. And we've had, over time, we've had
Hmm.
friends that we begin to share with, and we begin to tell them, and some friends embrace it, and we've had some that the relationship ended. and that's okay. I mean, it hurts, but it's, like we just started thinking about it as like, you know,
Mhm.
we probably the first couple of years we did it all by ourselves and our therapists, but nobody in our life knew about it. And so as we began bringing other people in on it, and the people that were open to it and like curious and wanting to know more, um,
Mhm.
like we became that much closer with them. And now we don't just have to talk about stuff we're going through with our therapist. Now we can talk about it with this one other person. And then now we have this other person that we can talk about it with. And then you walk into a room full of people and somebody who knows you and knows, Gianu
Mhm.
System comes up and says, is that E? Like recognizes the body language and recognizes, and and just as that expands and of course, I want
Yeah.
to preface this with saying like you have to be in a stable place first before you can start doing that, because you don't want to disrupt stuff while you're still trying to figure it all out. But like once you're kind of in a stable place, here, then as you start adding other people into your journey, like, um, I mean, just we talked about like our relationship and our marriage and getting so much
Mhm.
closer. Well, you get so much closer with everybody else too, and you it's almost like, yeah, you do lose some people along the way, but it's better to know that they're a
Mhm.
person who was not trustworthy. Rather than continue through life on
Our
something that,
we thought of
wasn't
it a
real to
lot
begin with.
that our trauma was relational. Our healing has also been relational. The Some of the biggest jumps in healing have come in relationship and through relationship. The reversal of what happened in the first place, and having those trusted people has been a huge part of that.
So true, right? Humans are social animals and we're really interdependent on each other rather than dependent versus independent.
Yes. And that is scary too, when you grow up with the message that people will hurt you and cannot be trusted. To begin to learn to trust people, oh my gosh, throw yourself off a cliff first. Like, no, I know.
Throw yourself off a cliff, go parasailing,
Right, right, exactly, exactly.
Really
Well,
terrifying.
that's how you find out who you can trust, apparently.
Yes. I may not actually go
It's true.
parasailing, but
I wouldn't recommend it.
I think I'm with you. I'm going to stay on the ground, much to the dismay of part of my own system,
Mhm.
who has lots of opinions. As we kind of like wrap up, I'm
Right.
curious if you have sort of parting words of hope or wisdom for people who are systems and for people who are supporters of systems. What would you want to leave folks with?
For me, always, 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 I tell people it gets better. My first year was so dark because I didn't know that it would get better. And it has not only gotten better, but my life is so much more full now than before I knew I was a system. It's so much better now than before I knew I was a system. I would not go back for anything. So it gets better, it gets easier. It it never gets less complex. It's always just going to be more complex from here on out, but it definitely also gets better.
I love that.
And I would say, to kind of piggyback on that, yes, it does get better, but I would say
Mm.
you deserve to be loved. You deserve to be
Mhm.
cared for.
Even the prickly
All
ones.
of your parts deserve to be loved and cared for. You
Mhm.
don't have to accept mediocrity. Like you don't have to accept less than that. And if you're in a relationship where you are having to accept less than that, know that you don't have to, and know that there is someone out there that will love you, that will accept you. And, you know, oftentimes it's not something you go look for. It just kind of finds you. And so don't focus on it, and just focus on you, loving yourself, caring for yourself. And when you have that compassion and love and empathy for you, you will find somebody who has that for you as well.
I just want to bask in those words. That's beautiful and so true. I feel like I have 84 other topics I would love to talk with you guys about. So I hate the fact that we have to end. I'm like, but I want to ask her about this and this and this whole list. Can I? Yes, I would love to do that.
Let's do
And we'll
it
get
again.
into parenting next time.
Oh my gosh, so many things. Parenting, coping with other people's reactions.
There you go.
Oh, yeah.
The internal, one of the things that so many people struggle with, right, is that like getting through your own sort of initial feelings of shame or embarrassment to be able to really open up even in therapy, even though you know intellectually, right? Like your therapist is a safe person, being able to just really dive into talking about what's going on.
Oh, yeah. Even the session where I went in and it was like, so I'm hearing this voice. I was so like, what are they gonna say? What? Oh my gosh! Like I said, I officially lost my mind now. Like, where do we go from here?
So relatable.
Yeah. So even just bringing it up to a therapist can be very daunting.
So hard, and it's so important, right, to be able to hopefully move forward.
Yeah.
So,
and real quick, just to say, therapists, you play by the same rules as you do with anybody else. If you tell a therapist that, how they respond determines whether you can trust them or not.
Because not every therapist is a good therapist.
Sadly, there's lots of horror stories out there, but I promise you there are good therapists out there, and it's worth finding a good therapist.
Yeah, absolutely. And there's also, other modalities that you can bring into, like literally, I could talk to you guys forever. You don't need to sleep, do you?
No, I'm good. I would love to talk modalities, man.
I've got to bribe you guys to come back. I really do.
Absolutely.
That'd be great.
Let's do it. I'm game.
Truly, though, thank you both for this conversation. I really, really think it's going to help so many people.
Absolutely.
And to everyone listening, we hope our conversation has been helpful. Don't forget to check the show notes for links. And if this has been helpful to you, consider sharing it with your partners, friends, and therapists, treatment providers. And stay tuned for a future episode with the Gianu System and their hubs. Until next time, let's keep healing. Thank you for tuning in. You can find our blog on Substack at healingmyparts.substack.com and on Instagram at healingmyparts. Just a disclaimer, any information shared in this podcast is not a substitute for professional therapy or behavioral health care, nor does listening to the podcast constitute a therapist-client relationship. Please be sure to take extra good care of you. And until next time, keep healing and thriving.